Aloha. I'm Denise Yamaguchi, the Executive Director of the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation, and I'm excited to welcome you to the 25th episode of Eat, Think, Drink. For those of you who have not done Eat, Think, Drink before, we do 1 hour of thinking and then 2 hours of eating and drinking. Tonight's program is being recorded and will be available on our website, so please silence your phones and refrain from talking as a courtesy to those presenting this evening. This 25th episode is called Beefing Up, Grazing Toward Increased Production. Before we dive into tonight's discussion, I'd like to express our gratitude to our presenting sponsor, Central Pacific Bank, and I want to welcome Kevin Sakamoto, Senior Vice President of Wealth Management, to say a few words.
Aloha, everyone. On behalf of CEO Arnold Martinez and the rest of the Central Pacific Bank Ohana, I'd like to welcome all of you to what promises to be yet another thought-provoking and insightful Eat, Think, Drink. Kudos to Denise Yamaguchi for her drive and determination to continue to get visibility and recognition to these sustainable issues and industries. As the invitation said, cattle has been around Hawaii since 1793, when Captain George Vancouver presented King Kamehameha with 6 cows and a bull. King Kamehameha created a 400-acre pasture surrounded by a rock wall and forbid hunting so cows could grow. And shortly after, it was the state's first local moko to be produced. Marketing guy put the joke in there. By 1929, there were 41 cattle ranchers in Hawaii. Ranching steadily declined over 2 million acres in classified grazing land over the years, but by 2015, only 75,000 acres remain. Still, thanks to the efforts of a lot of people, including many of you here in the audience today, the industry remains relevant despite high production costs and other challenges. Our speakers today will talk about innovative approaches to continued sustainability and resilience. And CPB is all about that, and I know all of you are as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Denise and say welcome and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
I'd also like to extend our appreciation to our supporting sponsors, Alexander & Baldwin, Bear, Hawaii Longline Association, United Fishing Agency, Kamehameha Schools, Lend-Lease, Ulupona Initiative, Waihata, and United Airlines. And thank you to our partners, Elite Parking, Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, Aloha Beer, and Fiji Water. I would also like to extend our gratitude to Honolulu Meat Company for generously donating the beef that our chefs have prepared for tonight's meal. Additionally, a special thanks goes to Kalei Eggs. Each one of you will go home with a dozen eggs. And Elite Parking for providing the complimentary valet parking for all of us. Our Eat, Think, Drink series launched in 2016 to foster meaningful conversations about critical agriculture and food issues in our community. Tonight marks our 25th event, focusing on beefing up Hawaii, grazing toward increasing production. The beef industry is a cornerstone of Hawaii's agricultural sector, significantly bolstering economies, especially in rural areas where ranching is a primary livelihood. Efforts to boost local beef production aim to decrease Hawaii's reliance on imported foods, improve food security, and retain more economic value within the islands. This evening, we will explore the challenges of the industry, as well as the opportunities for innovation and sustainability. Our keynote speaker this evening is Mr. Caires, Assistant Extension Agent, Department of Nutrition and Animal Sciences at CTAR. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Caires.
We're here to talk about beefing up Hawaii. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Maui County. Kinke Kaulike High School grad, 3rd class. Went to Oregon State for an animal science degree. Learned a lot there. Wow, so many things outside of the classroom too related to the industry. And before all that, I'm gonna pick on someone here, Alan Gottlieb. I wrote a scholarship application, and I said, I plan to come back to Hawaii one day after getting my master's and or my PhD. And came through. Hawaii Cattlemen's Council awarded me a scholarship back in 2000, which was awesome, and it defrays the cost of tuition. So it goes without saying, if I don't mention it a lot later on, we have all these great partners in the community, allied industry organizations, and I'm back here in Hawaii because of something like that. So keep it up. I got my PhD at Washington State, so I picked the two Pac-10 and then Pac-12 schools that now don't have a conference. Okay, so my Sundays and Saturdays are going to be a whole lot more free going forward, I think, once this conference realignment gets taken care of. But I took a job in Georgia at Berry College, the world's largest campus, 26,000 acres. We had a purebred Angus beef herd, commercial herds, dairies, equestrian facilities, and actually the largest student work program in the United States. We put a lot of students into vet school there, and a lot of them come in, like 95% come in, I want to be a veterinarian. Does that always happen? No. But it was a great training opportunity. I got to work a lot with young people and still work with 4-H and FFA in the community nearby, along with the industry, and that actually helped lead me home to join UH as an extension agent. So I threw my hat in the ring. I was fortunate enough to come back in 2016. And what is livestock extension? Well, you have teaching, applied research, and outreach, okay? Who are doing these things? Who are you working with? Well, you have animal science research people. Those are the ones who don't always get out of the lab, right? You work with a lot of industry clientele, farmers and ranchers, and you work with youth, right? Local government, policymakers, and community members like a lot of you, okay? What do you talk about? What do you do? The list on the left, okay, it's pretty extensive. It varies by the day. Your needs change with your clientele. We're working on genetics, dealing with this. Next thing you know, you're working on that. 2 weeks ago, oh my God, coffee senna. It's back, okay? Animals can die from this, noxious weeds. So it's a dynamic interplay, and just as fast as these needs change for our clientele, we have to respond in extension, okay? If you're trying to think about producing local beef here, right? Do we have a normal seasonal, like winter, snow comes, things stop growing, the bugs go away? No, right? It's like a tornado inside of a volcano of pest pressures, right? For grasses and plants. And does it always rain? No, there's all kinds of things that happen, right? Like drought and increased drought frequency. So here we are talking about beefing up Hawaii. Grass finishing beef is a big part of that, right? And we have a year-round growing season, and it's awesome. But guess what? We have to, put our pants on, go to work every day, and hope Mother Nature plays nice, right? So there's still a lot of things we can't control. I don't want to give you the illusion that we have it all figured out. Long-standing legacy here. We have an introduction that covered that. Cattle come in here in the late 1700s. The kapu, the establishment of a 400-acre operation, and here we go. Here we have some early footage from the 1930s of cattle being loaded on ships. And at one time, obviously, there have been world wars, right? Dried beef, salt beef, that was a pretty major commodity back in the day. Things have changed. We're not using as much animal fat to make explosives, right? But this was sort of like the birth of an industry, an export, right? Adding value, okay? Shipping it off island. Even within the state, if the majority of the cattle were probably on the Big Island like they still are now, where's the population center? Oahu. Unless we're going to teach the cattle the breaststroke, they're probably not going to make it, right? So our forefathers innovated, and they still continue to do. A lot of things happen. Wow, heptachlor, I mean, you can go on, pineapple residue, things have changed. Long story short, we had a really vibrant cattle feeding industry that supported the beef industry in the state. And then due to a variety of issues, rising costs of feed, that industry started declining, okay? Think about it as well. The plantation era, I think many of us would agree that that area has come and gone, right? All of the byproducts from sugar, bagasse, right? Sugarcane tops, pineapple silage, bran, green chop, whatever you want to call it. Those commodities provided valuable byproducts for the cattle feeding industry. When they went away, guess what? What happened to cost of production? Went up because you have to bring all of those adjuncts over on a ship, right? If you start counting the pennies, pretty soon you're dealing in dollars, okay? So there was a decline in the cattle feeding industry and things started to change. Droughts, they started happening more frequently as well, right? Can you keep all the calves here if you don't have something to feed them? And if Mother Nature isn't cooperating? No, so shipping cattle to the mainland, that's a viable business model. Still is today. So if you look at where these cattle go when they leave, a lot of them end up in the West Coast, but most will find their way to the Corn Belt, whether that's eastern Colorado, from Yuma through Nebraska and down through Texas, okay? You hear a lot that there are no feedlots left in the state. That's actually incorrect. There are 3 feedlots left, and they're on Maui, okay? They range in size. One of our panelists actually represents a feedlot on Maui, and they're great. They produce high-quality beef, just the same as grass finishing. Do our feedlots look the same as in the mainland? No. And in fact, if you look at the ration, we talk about grass versus grain finishing. Still, the majority of their ration, 90 to about 94%, is still grass or forage. If any grain is provided, again, if it's coming from the mainland in a bag, is it cheap? Is it hard to return that dollar invested? Yes. So byproducts, from grain to glass, Maui Brewing Company, Hawaii Brewing Company on the Big Island, right? Kona Brewing Company. Some of the small microbrews, they generate brewer's grain, right? As a result of, grain is laundered, it's mashed out, and then you have this byproduct. Guess what? Byproduct, going back into a production cycle to make high quality beef, okay? So grain or grass, it doesn't matter to me. We have active industries being supported on both, and really high quality beef being produced locally through both supply chains. More importantly, the majority of calves born in this state leave the state. What does that mean in terms of numbers? Well, I think in any given year, about 6 to 7% of all the beef consumed in the state is actually born and raised here. Okay? The other 93, 94%, and that'll change a little bit from year to year. COVID threw a little wrench in there, right? Is going to be imported. Okay? If every cow and every calf produced in the state stayed here, will it fulfill the demand? No. Okay? So we can't be 100% closed loop system. Could we work towards increasing that number? Yeah. Does it make sense? Probably doesn't make sense to keep every cow and every calf born from every cow here in the state. What if it doesn't rain? Drought? Could that be maybe risk management, the ability to ship them away? Yeah. Okay. So we have to keep our options open. Oh, I wish you could see this here. So this is, it's a little bit bleached, but here we have on the left a bunch of beef products produced from various steers from a local feedlot, actually Nobrega Ranch's feedlot. And you also have, on the other side, on the right, active 4-H youth development occurring at that feedlot. Again, using livestock as tools to help teach kids. It's a great deal. And so we have youth that are exposed to both grass finishing and grain finishing activities in the state. They understand that these are viable models. And perhaps, maybe if they wanted to stay in the industry and go down that path, there's a viable career for them there, okay? The segments of the industry are kind of shown here on the right. The numbers don't really matter, but when it comes to cow-calf production, those are the individuals that are producing calves, okay? And those calves will enter the food chain, or they're going to be kept as replacements. Where do they go? Do they go into a grass finishing enterprise here? Do they go into a feedlot, or do they get shipped, okay? Those are some of the changes. Real simply, calves are produced on this side. The point is, the industry here looks a little different than the mainland, okay? There are no Livestock Marketing Association members in the state. We don't have sale barns, so if you have calves in the mainland, you can drive down the road, put them on a truck, go to another town, and market your calves through a sale barn, okay? There's someone waiting to buy them every time the sale barn is open. Can you do that here? No, you have to be a price taker in sometimes, and if you have really good cattle, sometimes you can be a price maker. Okay, you have limited options. We have people who buy calves here locally, and we'll put them on a boat or give them, first class on Hawaiian Airlines to get them to the continental U.S., right? So there's some flux. The industry here doesn't look the same. We don't have auction markets. In terms of a seed stock industry to provide genetics for the entire state, that's extremely limited here. It's in its infancy. Years ago, we had Kipukai Ranch, and they were kind of the de facto genetic supplier for the state. We have a few large operations on the Big Island that have their own herds. We have a few new entrants into the market that are in the seed stock industry, and we have a bunch of really, really small producers that raise some purebred cattle as well, okay? They're all important. They're all important, okay? Cattle feeding, we already talked, there's 3 left in the state, okay? It's like the last of the Mohicans, but they keep going strong. And then when it comes to beef processing, we have a few big processors and we have a few small processors, and the number of processors available is also scarce, right? Okay? You need the big guys, you need the little guys, okay? Flexibility, options, it's a good thing. There's a bunch of other issues. Again, we can't control Mother Nature. Drought is a reality, but by and large, they're either going to be born and raised in Hawaii, shipped to the mainland, or they're going to be born and grazed here in a grass finishing program, or they're going to be born and raised here in a feedlot, which also typically will have a very high forage content of the ration, okay? So when you think of feedlot here versus the mainland, there are some differences, but typically speaking, the portion of grain in the feedlot rations here are going to be much lower. What does that mean? Okay, well, a finishing ration at a local feedlot, not Jay's, may have 6 to 8% grain in it, okay? So that's 94 to, a higher, or 92 to 94% forage, right? Okay, if you're in eastern Colorado, you get out of that short grass range, you go into a feedlot, a lot of those feedlot rations will be 96% grain with just enough forage to scratch the rumen to keep the animal healthy. Big differences, right? Would you all agree? Okay, if you actually do some FAMES analysis, which we're starting to do, like basically that's a really fancy name for a whole bunch of chemistry thrown at fatty acid profiles. Some fats taste good, some don't taste very good. You'll find that our feedlot finished beef here and our grass finished beef here in the state have nearly identical fatty acid profile signatures. So we're not, in this state, I don't think we're worried about feedlots being big polluters or anything like that. They're doing actually a really, really good job. An indicator of animal health for feedlot cattle is in the slaughterhouse, looking at the livers. How many abscesses are there, right? Oh my goodness, lesions. Our grain-finished cattle here in the state, if you inspect them, it's a rarity to see a liver abscess or a lesion. They're extremely healthy. If you look at our grass-finished cattle, guess what? They're extremely healthy too. So that's good, right? For consumers, for everyone in the room, we want that. We want healthy animals. Okay? But the point is, if you have them on a higher plane of nutrition, they're going to get to the finish line a little faster, okay? So think of it as myself being on a pedal bike, okay? That's grass finishing, long way home, okay? If I hopped on a, Kawasaki Ninja, I'm going to get to the finish line a lot faster, right? So what does that mean? Well, from birth until harvest, in a feedlot finished beef, you're looking at anywhere between 12 to 14 months in the mainland. Here in Hawaii, because the ration's a little different, 15 to 18 months, okay? For a grass-finished producer here, are there some differences in climates in Hawaii? What about soil types? What about grasses? Does it change in terms of elevation if we're talking about cold nights, hot days? Oh yeah, so there's gonna be some variation, right? So grass-finished producers here from birth until harvest can be 18 months, 20 months, 22 months, 28 months, 32 months, 36 months, 42 months, 48 months, okay? Are they all gonna taste the same? Have you guys heard that term like terroir? So like a certain taste from a certain place, okay? Soil pH, all that stuff goes into it. The good news is I can tell you, like, if you compare local grass-finished beef, regardless of the supplier, and you compare it to a lot of the imported or domestic product, from, like, say, the U.S. grass finishing programs, and there's a lot more Australian product. Sensory evaluation, we've done this at the Maui County Fairs and Ag Fests. The sensory evaluation for local grass finished beef, 9 times out of 10 will dominate the either imported domestic or imported international grass finished product. What does that mean? Is that good? Yeah, so we got sort of a taste in the marketplace. Is it always good? There's a few people who are like, no. Okay, but people are trying, and they're trying to make it better, okay? So cows ride planes, they also ride ships. We have 3 examples of born and raised here, shipped to the mainland, born and raised in a feedlot here in the middle, and on the far right, grass finish. Guess what? All of them are prime. Is it possible? Yeah. Okay. Some have really, really fine marbling, some don't. It's a little hard with the lighting in this room to see this. But at the end of the day, what's the difference? You got 2 options for heart-healthy, viable, excellent beef produced within the state of Hawaii, okay? So I wouldn't get into the whole grain versus grass finish because there's a good chance the grain finished cattle here are probably more grass finished than some of the grass finished product you're bringing in from the mainland or Australia, okay? So we got a lot of heart-healthy local beef. That's a big win. Here we have a recent research trial along with Brewer's Grain here, just to show you some of those things. They don't show up real well, so I'll just cook through it. This is an important graphic, though, I'll mention. What is that on the far right? Chicken, okay? What's something you see when you go to the grocery store in the aisle? When you're looking at the chicken portion of the case? Uniformity. It's usually cheap too, right? Comparatively, but now everything is expensive. But every drumstick looks the same, right? Every thigh looks the same. You all agree with that? For the most part, right? Can you say the same thing when you look at beef in the case? Probably not, right? Plus, you got like 119 different cuts of beef, right? When you're talking about chicken and the parts, you got drumsticks, breasts, or thighs, right? Okay. The other white meat, what are we talking about there? Pork? Does pork look a lot different in the case, or is it pretty consistent? A lot more consistent, right? When they're all raised under a roof in a barn with HEPA filtration and controlled lighting and controlled feeding, you know, they basically eat when they're supposed to, they poop when they're supposed to. You're going to get some uniformity, right? Are they under the influence of Mother Nature very much? Probably not. But I mean, this is an example of a marketing campaign gone wrong. You know, pork being the other white meat, you know, that pale meat characteristic is actually like an indicator of some of the worst meat quality ever. So a successful marketing campaign that helped take pork from a very, very tender, wholesome product with high sensory to making something dry and not as appealing on your plate. Okay? So we have to eat. We're at one of these events right now, right? So not everything you see printed, even though it's a successful marketing campaign, is actually going to do great things for the industry, right? They had a huge redirect. Bacon, is that something everyone in the room likes, bacon? Pork bellies lost a lot of value because they had no fat. Fat is flavor, okay? I'm going to zip forward a little bit. You have to make choices. And if you're talking about how do you improve grass-finished beef, well, genetics are a big way. You're only going to be able to go as far as the genetics take you. And management is a big thing too, because if you don't feed them, you're not going to express the genetic potential, right? Okay? What can we do? Genetic variation, forage, rainfall. There's a lot of issues here, and the biggest thing is the inconsistency, and it's usually in the tenderness arena, okay? That image didn't work, but there's no magic solution to all this. There's multiple breeds of cattle here in the state. There's always going to be good ones and bad ones within a breed, okay? So once you take the hide off, you try and find the ones that are good and then learn to like what they look like, right? Figure out like, hey, how can I do this more often? There's concept and theory. You want to identify the good ones, get rid of the ones that aren't as meritorious, and fill those gaps in the knowledge. No silver bullets. These are some of the things in the genetic toolbox that individuals are using, including the individuals on our panel. We can speak to some of this more in depth later. And we have a shear force tenderness machine here. We got over 6,000 tenderness records here just in this data set. What does that all mean? That's a lot of work. This was as of 2021. We've added, I think, 4,000 records to this. But I mean, like, a bunch of data on a graph, what does this mean? Does this have any value? Well, if you actually get the shovel and the o'o and you start mining this a little bit further, you can break it down by breed. So those same observations that we just saw here, teased apart by breed, ta-da, we see some pretty big differences, okay? Are they statistically significant? Yes. Can we break this down even further? We sure can. We sure can. We can even break it down by sex, by breed, and by sex. So now we can evaluate, hey, where are our winners, where are our losers? How can we bring this back? We have genomic data, DNA on all these animals, so we've been able to like refine the measuring stick to identify the good ones. So if somebody here like Scott Enright, there's a lot of people from Maui here, okay, wow, goes to the supermarket and they buy something from Paniolo Cattle Company, Maui Cattle Company, Hawaii Meats. Before they even open the package, DNA, selection, a whole lot of effort, 32 to 40 months of work was put in to ensure that that's going to be a desirable eating experience. That's what we want, right? So those are some of the things we try and do on the university side to make sure we support our clientele. If you break it down, genetics is a big part of that. The age of the animal is another, and quality grade. Quality grade also influences tenderness. It's a little bit, but if you have a little bit more lubrication in that pan, that's probably going to help just a little bit. So have you ever had a prime steak and not been satisfied? I know I have. I've had prime steaks and I've been like, wow, not to dog anybody. I told Snake River Farms product manager this myself. I had a $300 ribeye at a really high upscale restaurant, Snake River Farms, Tomahawk, and it was a sendback, and it was one of the worst things I've ordered. I've had middle select, high select, grass finish with no external fat produce a better eating experience. So it's complicated, right? There's no one thing that's going to ensure that this is going to be good, but we can sure do a lot of things to make sure our probability of having it right is more often than not, right? So that's kind of what it boils down to. We do taste testing. We've done this with about 600 members of the community in Maui County over about 4 years. We've also engaged the MEDB youth interns in high school and college to do like sensory evaluation and beef. And local grass-fed and local grain-fed typically dominate the palate sensory preference for most of our young people, okay? More tenderness stuff here, juiciness, off flavors, all that stuff. Here we have a bull calf and a cow that's actually at the Meilani Experiment Station on the Big Island. That calf is sired by a bull with Angus genetics from 1963. Guess what? He's in the top 1 percentile of the population for tenderness, marbling, ribeye, and percent retail product. Top 4% of the breed for average daily gain. So if they gain and they grade on grass or on grass plus grain, is that going to be a good thing? We've made these genetics available to our clientele statewide. So a lot of excitement here. We can't cover everything today. Does the rubber meet the road? Well, if we have Warner Bachelor shear force tenderness values of 3.96, that's less than 8 pounds required to shear the muscle. Elite very tender is 8 pounds, and we have a load of animals coming off of grass after 2 years of drought in the very elite tenderness category, and the DNA supports that we got it right. Is this the kind of stuff we need to be providing to industry? Heck yes, and twice on Sunday, right? This is what we got to do. We have the DNA profiles of those animals right there, and if we can select for animals near the favorable end, we can actually change the populations, and we can do that very fast. It's beginning to be done already statewide. We have people adopting this on every island, and they have been for a few years now. So excitement. I'm going to get through this. Genetics, keep it practical, and try and select for a little bit more carcass quality, tenderness. But long story short, if there's anything that gets in the way of profitability, you don't need it. Turn and burn, okay? Common sense, married with a lot of the technology we have, is a good thing. And then you'll get some favorable results. This we cannot control, okay? Mother Nature will say, okay? We can't control that, but we can choose drought-tolerant forage species that can work and be harvested. This was here on Oahu. Is there land availability issues in Hawaii for ag? Yeah. Land is being banked by some entities. Some of it's going into commercial real estate, right? Ag land, right? That's not good. Is there a lot of ag land still in ag? Yes. Do we want to keep it that way? Yes. Can you all help with that? Damn right, that's why you're here, right? You care about the local industry. What about bioenergy crops? Are we trying to produce alternative fuels for the aviation industry, for cars, for even like natural gas? Yeah. Are they competing for the same resources that we need to grow forage and graze animals? Yes. Do we hate the bioenergy people? No, we find opportunities for linkages. Guess what? This whole program right here is at a local farm here on Oahu, and one of the offtakes from them producing things for a digester is animal feed products. It could be green chop, it could be silage. Silage is better than green chop in this case. So there's opportunities to create linkages, strategic alliances between different agricultural industries and move forward. Okay? I'm going to wrap this up right here. A lot of ecosystem services are provided by the cattle industry. Okay? We have nutrient cycling. They eat and they poop, and that's really good for building soil health, especially if they're managed in a good grazing system. Overgrazing is bad, right? We don't want that. But there's a whole lot of things that if we do right, we start banking carbon. Okay? Cattle help us do that. The grass species that they graze help us do that. Do they manage fuel loads? Are wildfires an issue? Oh yeah, everyone in Maui County, last year was pretty rough, but we have something that can manage large tracts of land in terms of vegetation, mitigate fuel loads, build soil health, bank carbon. Think of it as CO2 photosynthesis, right? Atmospheric carbon going into the ground. Cattle help clean the filter by grazing. Okay, so how many of you have heard of cattle and emissions? Okay, 2%, that's really not a lot. If you think about it, how many of you go snorkeling? When you look at the fish on the reef, are you thinking, oh, you guys are just excreting a lot of emissions and carbon into the environment? That doesn't make sense. Think about it, right? That's kind of an issue, but we can keep carbon stored here, and that's a huge thing. 2% for the entire beef industry versus just transportation in general. We still got to get places, but are there opportunities to reduce the emissions, the carbon footprint of cattle? Yeah. Plant legumes, diversify pastures, feed them seaweed. We got Bovobox brought here to the state that's got rumensin. It'll drop feed intake 20 to 30% and drop methane production 15%. 30 years, hundreds and hundreds of papers, extremely safe. These are things we can do to help mitigate drought, improve local production, and boost pasture diversity. Grazing legumes will drop methane emission in cattle tremendously. They increase the protein of the forage. Guess what? More groceries, more mega cows. Are they going to go through a grass finishing program faster, or are they going to take a long time to get to the end point? No, they just hopped off the pedal bike and jumped on the Bugatti. Okay, so these are things we can do to help the local ranching industry. There's a lot of opportunities here. I'm going to leave them here. There's cultural value, but the secret weapon that we got to talk about is youth development, and I can't not bring this up. We have to expose them to ag now. And they go to the mainland and they compete in national contests, and they actually do really, really well. So we have kids that we're trying to get into agriculture. As we go into our panel, there's a lot of issues that, I'm just going to leave this slide up here, that we have to face in the livestock industry going forward. Feel free to ask any of the panelists. But what can you do? We can't do it alone. We need your help. We talked about a lot of the other things. Buy local is very important, right? I'll just wrap this up with an anecdote and go back to the last slide. You know, on Maui for about 3 weeks, you couldn't find Chinese cabbage anywhere. You couldn't find it anywhere. I mean, multiple stores, suppliers. Warren Watanabe, he's the executive director of Maui County Farm Bureau. I had this conversation with him, and May Nakahata, they're in Alaska right now doing industry things, trying to bring money to industry. They're looking for Chinese cabbage too, and they're like, wow, what happened? Guess what? Most of the Chinese cabbage on Maui is produced by a single farmer named Robinson. He went to the Philippines for 2 weeks. How can a product disappear from the entire supply chain with one person going on vacation? That's the reality and the sensitivity of our local food system here. So think local, put your money where your mouth is, buy local. Thank you very much.